Colonialization, according to Joseph Godlewski, refers to the rapid spread and the cultural influence of architectural styles and techniques. This concept significantly shaped architecture globally, especially throughout the 1900s. As globalization took place, not only did it connect economies and trade, but it also facilitated the exchange of architectural ideas and technologies worldwide. During the 20th century, advancements in transportation and communication made it easier for architectural ideas to spread globally, such as automobiles, airplanes, the radio, assembly line, and more. But as colonial powers expanded, architecture often reflected Western designs, which often overshadowed local traditions and transformed urban landscapes in ways that undermined local identity. This is not what Swati Chattopadhyay had in mind. Indian government, tackling the prospect of defaulting on external payments, adopted a program of macroeconomic stabilization. The effects were beyond recognition, as stated by Swati, due to the foreign direct investments. This new industrial policy allowed 100% foreign equity in export and power generation areas and up to 51% of automatic approval of FDI in 34 critical industries. One of the main objectives included removing obstacles for export-oriented manufacturing in order to attract multinational corporations to find efficiency-seeking FDIs. Chattopadhyay argues that India being used as a manufacturing platform leads to a spatial hierarchy, creating designated differentially valued labor. This capitalization of majorly the consumer, durable goods, and automotive industries compared to capital good industries has mostly allowed the increased visibility of fast food points rather than technology transfer or spillover. According to the model of global connectivity referred to by Swati, globalization in India has led to urban displacement, cultural erosion, and economic inequality, all contributing to a hierarchical dispersed front line and backspace. This leads to a dissonance with the country as the local infrastructure, those untouched by FDI, is at painful odds and out of touch with global priorities. An example of such displacement and cultural erosion is the eradication of a village that originally existed amidst the city of Delhi. The 10th five-year plan stated, "The presence of urbanized villages in the middle of the city is an anachronism." This was said with the objective of claiming the village space for high-yield real estate, benefiting an entirely new group of people. While globalization can be bad, India, 3 decades after gaining independence in 1947, yielded only a 3.5 GDP growth per year through socialist planning and self-sufficiency, hence bringing about the stance regarding globalization being beneficial to India's overall development. Overall, globalization has many positive values. In A Better World is Possible, an exploration of utopian visions by author and research associate Ambrose Monge, Monge claims that globalization is associated with human rights, peace, and global governance. She further states that it allows everyone to be instantly connected with everyone else, with mutual understanding and constructive interchange, where people can pick up and choose from various diverse, rich cultures. At the same time, she suggests that globalization points towards the widening gap between the rich and poor, the global domination of multinational corporations, and the relentless pursuit of profit that threatens the environment. Additionally, she argues that on the political level, globalization is associated with imperialism, westernization, and more particularly, Americanization. Globalization has had similar effects on India at the economic level. Author Gurappa Naidu states that globalization has had a direct impact on shaping the structural framework of the Indian economy while simultaneously smoothing integrating into the global economy. However, Naidu also argues that globalization in India has denationalized important state-owned sectors of the Indian economy. Furthermore, he suggests that globalization has brought a heightened focus on the city and consequently neglected the agricultural and rural sectors of the country.
So, while globalization has revitalized and connected nations and economies and brought about political and social change at a global and even international level, it has simultaneously neglected the needs and ways of life of the Indian people. it has diverted attention from the local level to the national and international level, ultimately creating a modern but urban-centric society. In her analysis of Kolkata's architecture, Chattopadhyay exposes the disconnection between westernized developments and local traditions, especially when it comes to the imagery of good living promoted by real estate developers. As she notes, names like Sunny Dew, Silver Spring, and Highland Park convey the fantasy of a green suburban oasis far removed from the city's realities. She points out how these developments target financially capable, non-resident Indians, with 30% booked by NRIs out of the 1,100 flats sold. This development pattern illustrates the Western influence through a cut-and-paste model of suburban living, which, as Chattopadhyay critiques, fails to acknowledge the middle-class realities of local Indians. Her argument highlights the imposition of globalized, standardized forms on Kolkata, where the state's role is creating conditions that allow global practices in their already standardized forms to be plugged in. This comment allies with the idea that these infrastructures impose external ideals of luxury on Kolkata's landscape, often at the expense of local culture and the needs of the majority. The new suburban boom, driven by real estate and government collaboration, prioritizes a certain kind of progress, one that reflects Western notions of development and luxury. Her critique of the commodification of architecture by real estate developers further reinforces this idea. The imagery used to sell these spaces, a lawn in front of the garden and back, is not rooted in Bengali tradition, but in a generalized Western suburban aesthetic. The selling point is not the architecture itself, but the image of the landscape, a Western standard of suburban life, which sets an aspirational goal for local residents to achieve. This imagery carefully avoids connecting to Bengali's countryside, emphasizing that this form of development is disconnected from local traditions. Chattopadhyay also condemns the cut-and-paste approach of multinational corporations, where standardization dominates the urban landscape. She argues that such models, while appearing as symbols of progress, are resistant to improvisation and fail to adapt to local context, leading to inefficient urban spaces. For Chattopadhyay, these structures must either be accepted or abandoned the whole cloth, suggesting that a total rejection of this Western template is the only solution. This notion of abandonment arises from her assertion that the village must disappear as an economic and social entity, transforming its space into a commodity for real estate. However, while Chattopadhyay calls for a wholesale rejection, our argument complicates this position. We agree that Western developments in Kolkata's architecture are largely cut-and-paste impositions, but rather than abandon them entirely, these structures could evolve into hybrid spaces where local and global influences coexist. Instead of solely displacing local culture, these developments could represent a fusion of international and regional elements, forming a hybridized urban identity. This model does not erase local traditions, but allows them to coexist with global influences, offering a nuanced response to the complex dynamics of westernization in Kolkata. Chattopadhyay recognizes that technology has both a positive and negative influence on globalization. She argues that overall, its homogenization of cultures makes globalization and urbanization through technology a negative action. Technological advancement, whether that be the printing press or the internet, has played a pivotal role in spreading knowledge all over the world. But the cultural flows change cultures to become too similar, and other cultures become absorbed by the westernized architecture. This assimilation results in tension from locals, and it limits opportunities for marginalized communities. On the other hand, without technology's widespread globalization, many countries today would not have had the economic growth which gives opportunity for more countries to be on the international level.
Recently, the World Bank stated with the narrowing of the current account deficit and strong foreign portfolio investment, foreign exchange reserves touched an all-time high of $670.1 billion in early August 2024. Greater openness to trade will, in turn, enhance India's technological capabilities, improve productivity, spur growth, and build long-term economic resilience. Although there may be critiques of how India is growing economically, it is undeniable that opening their markets globally has led to an increase in job employment, specifically for construction. With large companies opening corporate campuses in India, competition arises against traditionally advantaged economic foci like New York. As India gains more global focus, its needs can become as important as its economic output. Since most Indian citizens inhabit rural areas with traditional architecture, it is imperative to address their cultural needs to reap the most benefits of globalization while minimizing the negative impacts on the country's cultural landscape. Chattopadhyay mentions the figure and ground relationship between the Infosys campus and the rolling hills of the countryside. However, in her description, there is no interaction between the American-style architecture of the campus and the Indian environment surrounding it. The figure and ground are detached from each other, while in actual figure and ground relationship, the ground is meant to support the figure and vice versa. The American campus featured grassy lawns and a swimming pool. The grass would be switched out with the native Indian plants like neem, and a lotus pond could be used instead of a swimming pool. This is one way to integrate traditional elements into an American design. Another way is to include conventional designs with cut stone or carved wood at the facades of the buildings. One can experiment with the combination of Western and Indian architecture and look to the past to find successful projects that incorporate the two styles. The blend of Indian and Western architecture did not start recently. In fact, according to the Indian Institute of Art and Design, Indo-Saracenic architecture took major cues from ancient Indian architecture for its appearance and took references from Western architecture for its function. This blend of Indian forms merging with the functionality of Western architecture formed an iconic set of structures that are state-of-art. Modern examples of hybridized Indian architecture include the Tomei Villas by Note Design in Alibag, based on a typical Indian courtyard house, and on House of Stream by Architecture BRIO in Mumbai, reaching out into the landscape to capture views and embrace the site's natural elements. Overall, the integration of cultures is successful in urbanization and technological advances while maintaining culture. Then globalization can be beneficial. One can look at this hybrid urban identity as a productive way of maintaining culturally rich environments while allowing said culture to be complete globally. The case of India exemplifies how globalization can foster cultural integration and urban development while reshaping cities to compete globally. Swati Chattopadhyay believes the effects of globalization in India were quite significant. General globalization took place with the exchange of architectural ideas and technologies worldwide, as well as the economics and trade. Globalization has made it less difficult to enter the Indian market and has encouraged Americans to create their ideas. Investing in the country has had tremendous impact on the shape and perception of India's cities and on public visuality.